Grace, mercy, and peace to you from God our Father and our Lord Jesus the Christ. 3 illustrations. Shortly after we came here, Karen and I listened to a program from James McDonald, who is the senior pastor of Harvest Chapel outside of Chicago. He has a radio program. We also listened to him at Moody Bible Institute. And he told the story of a time in his ministry when he was just beginning his ministry. And he was called to be the chaplain of the local police department and fire department. And as a chaplain, he would often be called when somebody was injured in some kind of an event or hurt. And on this particular occasion, James was called because a young boy had committed suicide. He hanged himself. And when he went to the home, the boy was still there, and the parents were just incredulous. They were just beside themselves, as all of us can imagine if something like that were to happen in our families. And as James was there talking to the mother who was beside herself, as I just mentioned, he made some suggestions, and he asked her, what had happened. And she said, we tried to get all the help that we could. We went to all of the social agencies. We went to all of the different governmental agencies and programs, but nothing would help. And then James asked her a question. He said, did you go to any of the churches? And she thought for a moment and looked at him in disbelief and said, why in the world would I want to do that? Why in the world would I want to do that? How would you answer the question? How would you answer a question which not only is a question but contains within it an accusation that the church is impotent and couldn't have done anything anyway? What would you have said to the woman under these circumstances as to what the church could do? And what can the church do in moments when the world is hurting? So that's the first illustration, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. The second illustration just happened not too long ago, this past Thursday, when Karen and I were at Panera. We were sitting down and eating there, and there was a table with two men and a woman, and they appeared to be reviewing an application for employment. And I'm not sure of that, but that's what it sounded like. And on one occasion, one of the persons said, look, this individual said he was a Christian. And the other person who seemed to be in charge said, looked at him and said, well, that doesn't mean very much. Are you a Christian? Does it mean anything? Does it mean anything to you individually and to your family and to the people around you? Or would somebody say, well, he's a Christian. Hans is a Christian, but that doesn't mean very much. So that's the second illustration. Third illustration. Here we are in a beautiful church building. The sun is coming in through beautiful stained glass, and we have smiles on some faces, not right now, but earlier we had smiles on faces. And you'd think that the church was really doing well. The church at large. But is it? You know that 6,000, and I know I've used these statistics before, that 6,000 churches close their doors every year. 6,000 churches close their doors. 3,500 individuals leave the church every day. We have 800 new church plants. But population growth would dictate that we have close to 10,000 church plants just to keep up with the growth in population. 9 out of 10 pastors leave the ministry before they retire because they can't take it anymore. The stress of the demands of life. Is our church in a good shape? Is it in the kind of shape that we need to have a church in order to make a difference in the community that we live in and with the people who come in our congregations to our worship services and other activities. So 3 illustrations. The one thing that each illustration has in common with the other is that there has been an incredible power failure in our church, and in our churches, and in our lives. There's been a power failure, and that's what the text for this morning's gospel talks about. It talks about the fact that Jesus is coming with the disciples back down from the Mount of Transfiguration, or where they have been transfigured, or where they've seen Jesus transfigured, and where they have been affected. And they come down back into the valley, and the first thing that they see is that the people of the church are arguing. And perhaps that's what we too often do when we are encountering difficulties that we're not capable of handling. We start to argue with one another. So Jesus finds them arguing. He says, "What are you arguing about?" And somebody in the audience or in the congregation or in the group that is there, and I'm purposely using all of those phrases because what I'm saying is applicable to all of those. Somebody raises their hand, so to speak, and says, "Master, Jesus," he said, "I brought my son here, my son who's been convulsed, and I brought him here to be healed." But they were what? Unable to do it. There was a power failure. The disciples couldn't do it. They had been commissioned to do it. They'd been called to do it. They'd been called by Jesus, as we read in the 3rd chapter of the Gospel, according to Mark, that he had called them to preach and to heal or to drive out demons. But they were not able to do it. They experienced a power failure. And so what should we be doing? Well, it's the important thing for us, I think, to first of all understand is that we have to, as the church, not stay up on some kind of transfigured mountain. It's wonderful as it is, it's important as it is, and it's important as it is to identify who Jesus really was. We have to get down there with the people where they're hurting. And I'm not suggesting that we have another program, but what I am suggesting is that wherever you and I are, whatever our employment situation is, whatever our neighborhood situation is, wherever you and I are at any one moment, we have to make sure that we as the people of God are engaging those persons who are hurting. We can't just walk by. We can't just drop $1 in a hat. We have to live with them in a way that identifies with them so that they recognize that Jesus is there, that Jesus living through us, in us, as Paul writes in Galatians. That Jesus is there for them. That there is no power failure. Raphael puts it very well in a painting. He was a contemporary of Jesus, a contemporary of Luther. He was an Italian, so they probably never met. And he painted a picture of the painting of the Transfiguration, where Jesus is in all of his glory, and then you see in the bottom, you see all the people arguing and fighting and hurting. And we as the church need to recognize that we can have experiences where we are transfigured, but more importantly, where we recognize Jesus as being transfigured, but we need to be there with the people who are in pain. So that's the first thing that we have to recognize. The second thing that we have to recognize is our inability itself. Again and again, we see in this text and in many texts that we, without Jesus, are unable to deal with our situation. That we are not capable of handling the problems around us. It's one thing for me to say here that we need to be there. It's another thing for me to say that we can do so on our own. Because if I were to tell you that we can do so on our own, I would be lying. Because we can't. And we have to recognize it. And Jesus, as he's talking to the Father, and the Father is saying that they were unable. And then he says, if you can. Jesus says, if I can. Jesus can, but we can't. We have to accept the fact that we are both unable. And then this incredible exchange takes place where Jesus says, you know, if you believe, everything is possible. And the Father says, I believe, help my unbelief. I believe, help my unbelief. Do you confront your unbelief? Do you confront the fact that you, at any one moment in your life, are experiencing a tension between belief and unbelief? Let me see if we can illustrate. Because it's so important for us to recognize that this text does not suggest by any means that you should not doubt. We should not doubt. The issue is not doubt. Doubt is not a sin. Doubt often occurs out of circumstances which exist, which we cannot control, which we cannot deal with. That's when doubts occur. There's here belief and unbelief. I need some volunteers, so I'll nominate some. One of my favorite volunteers is Mike. And then we're going to get Amber. And while James is tapping on the pew, we're going to get James. Okay. Now, Mike, your unbelief. Okay. And we can stretch you down that way a little farther. Amber, your belief. James, you're right in the middle. So let me just, what we're talking about is belief, Amber. She's glowing Amber. Okay, he's belief. And over here we have unbelief. Stretch it out just a little bit more. Most of us live our lives between, just as James is. You can put your hands on. Don't they look foolish? This is what I know. So, belief, unbelief. Most of us live our lives between belief and unbelief. And that's what James is doing. There's this constant struggle in our lives. Not one of us, I can dare say, would be able to say of himself, I've never doubted. Because doubt occurs when the tension between belief and unbelief is not resolved. That's when doubt occurs. And what we have in our text is Jesus saying, if you believe, everything is possible. And at that point, the Father says, I believe. I believe. Come on, I believe. I believe. But, hey, unbelief is pulling, right? And that's what happens in our lives. And we have to recognize that that's how we live our lives. And that our doubt that exists should lead us to conclude that we can't live in this tension by ourselves. But we need to turn to our Lord Jesus. And you see, I've gone a long way to illustrate the point. Thank you very much. Thank you. And that's the point. Here is the Father with Jesus, the Son, and his Father is saying, I believe, help thou my unbelief. Do you see what's happening in that? The Father is praying. The Father is praying to Jesus. He's taking his doubts, he's taking his unbelief to Jesus himself, and that's what we are called to do. When we are in a situation where we feel the tension between belief and unbelief, when we feel this incredible tension that exists in most of our lives, when we're honest with ourselves, we need to fall on our knees and begin to pray. And prayer is a difficult thing. Let me illustrate. There was a bar in Mount Vernon, Texas. It's supposed to be a true story, but I was not able to confirm that in any way. But I did find it in several reports that this bar was called the Drummond's Bar. In this little community of Mount Vernon, which was essentially a Baptist community in Texas. And the bar decided that it needed to expand its facilities, and so they decided to build on, make the bar bigger so that they could have more customers on weekends especially. And as they were doing this, the Baptist church, which was not too far away from there, decided that they would resist and try to stop people from building onto the bar. And so they had prayer service, and prayer service, and prayer service. And the Thursday before the bar was to open, lightning struck the bar, blew it into smithereens. A few weeks later, the bar owner decided to sue the church and claimed that the church, either directly or indirectly, was responsible for the bar burning down. The church answered and denied that they had anything to do with it. And when the judge was looking at the paperwork, and here in front of him were representatives from the church and the bar owner, he looked at the paperwork and he said, I don't know how I'm going to rule. He said, but one thing is clear already. He said, the bar owner believes in prayer, and the members of the Baptist church don't. Now, is that the kind of prayer that we live on? Is that the kind of prayer that we live on? What's your prayer life like? What do you pray for? What do you pray about? Do you pray? Or is it just a few words that are said in front of as grace before a meal? Not that I'm discouraging that. But I want us to challenge ourselves and recognize that we need to pray. We in this congregation need to become a praying congregation. This is a wonderful, generous congregation. We're a congregation, when there's a need, we step up. When we have people in our congregation that are ill, we not only step up, but we are concerned and we do pray. But we can always pray. How many of you have seen the new movie out, War Room? Have you seen that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a movie that was made with $3.5 million, which in today's world is practically nothing. And they made this movie, and most everybody thought it would be a flop. Maybe a few Christians here and there would go and attend and watch the movie, and then would move on and forget about it altogether. But you know, over Labor Day weekend, it won the race. More people went to see War Room than any other movie over Labor Day weekend. And if you saw the movie, you would recognize why. Because it points out for us in the story, as the story unfolds, the absolute incredible importance of prayer. Here we have a couple. I think the name was Elizabeth and Tony Jordan. And Elizabeth and Tony Jordan. Elizabeth was a real estate agent. Tony was a sales rep, and their lives were going rather well. They looked financially secure, but their family life was being destroyed from the inside out. They didn't deal with the issues. And then, as the real estate agent, the wife meets Miss Carr. And meets her, and she tells Elizabeth about the incredible power of prayer. From there, the story unfolds. I won't tell the rest of the story because I hope that you will go and see it yourself. But I can tell you that the point that the story makes, that the movie makes, is a point that we each need to remind ourselves and remind each other of. We can't handle these things by ourselves. If the church is experiencing a power failure, we can't handle that. If the people are leaving from the church, we cannot handle that. If we are finding ourselves in a situation where somebody says, why would I ever go to a church? We don't have the answer in ourselves. The only thing that you and I can do is to pray. Is to pray that God, that Christ work through us. You see, the power is not in us. It isn't as if Jesus were pouring some power into us. It's that He Himself comes into us, as Paul says in Galatians. He says, we no longer do it ourselves. It is Christ who lives through me. When we find those incredible, powerless situations, stop. Pray. Because if anyone ever asks you, why would I ever do that? What do you have to give as a church to the hurting world? There's only one answer. Jesus Christ, our Savior. It is He who can respond, not we. And He will. He's promised.